I'd like to call to order the appointments and ordinance meeting on Wednesday, March 9th at 5:32 p.m. via WebEx. This meeting is being recorded by the Appointments and Ordinance Committee. If any other persons present are doing the same, please notify me at this time. Seeing none. MGL Chapter 30A, Section 20G. No person shall address this meeting without permission of the chair, and all persons shall, at the request of the chair, be silent. No person shall disrupt the proceedings of this meeting. If after a clear warning from the chair, a person continues to disrupt the proceedings, the chair may order the person to withdraw from the meeting. If the person fails to withdraw, the chair will eject the person from the meeting. Councillor Gwen is present. Councillor Bullock.
Present.
Councillor Forgy.
Here.
Councillor Jarvis.
Here.
Councillor Lapiensky.
On the phone.
Very good. Do I have, we have someone to accept the minutes of February 9th?
So moved, Jarvis.
Second, Forgy.
Are there any changes? All those in favor? Any objections? Any abstaining? Seeing none, we'll forward that. We have no public hearings tonight. That moves us to our first working business tonight, which are the mayor's appointments and reappointments. Would one of you like to volunteer to read that this evening?
I can read it.
Okay, Chris. Councilor Forgy.
Okay. It's order number fiscal year 22-125. The City Council moved that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council, pursuant to Charter Section 2-10, affirms the following appointments and reappointments by the mayor. Appointments: Mayor's Task Force Against Domestic Violence, Ginny DeSorga, Council President Designee, terms to expire December 31st, 2023. Planning and Construction, Emily Ish, term of expire, it says, to December 31st, 2024. In reappointments, Board of Registrars, Wanda Mizuska Pyfrom. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Term to expire April 20th, 2025. Majority vote required.
Can I have a second on that motion?
Second, Jarvis.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. I'll accept a friendly to make sure that it just says term to expire on December 31st, 2024, to amend that as Councilor Forgy read. Is there any discussion on any of these candidates? I think we get to work with Councilor DeSorga on a regular basis, so that's a good thing. And we have a former councilor with Wanda there. So anyone have any discussion? Seeing none on that, are any of the members that we're going to consider to affirm the mayor's appointments, are they present with us this evening? Are any of you there that would like to speak with us? Seeing none. Is there any other comments for any of the committee? Anybody have any questions, comments? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, we will forward a positive unanimous recommendation to affirm the nominees. And we, once again, always appreciate all the people that volunteer for these positions, and it's what makes local government come together and work. So thank you very much. Our next point of order tonight, and our next thing is a motion. Councillor Jarvis, would you like to read this motion?
I will. Order number FY 22-126. The city council moves that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council vote to repeal the provisions of Section 48 of Chapter 31 of the Massachusetts General Laws relative to the appointment of its fire force under civil service rules as voted at the March 14th, 1936 town meeting. A majority vote required. Do you want me to read the rationalization, or you'll take care of it?
Nope. No, not yet. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Do I have a second on that motion for discussion?
Second, Forgy.
Okay, we thank you for that. So the rationale on this, I think we are going to recognize Chief Strahan, who is on with us. And Chief, are you able to speak with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yep. Now,
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. So I see the rationale here that at the town meeting in 1936, they voted to the town accept the provisions of 48 of 31 of the revised relative to the appointments of the fire force under civil service. Move the fire chiefs from civil service, a ballot question would need to be placed on the general election, and we're not considering that. So, Chief, why are we doing this?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for having me. It's nice to finally see some new city councilors that I haven't met before. So hello to the two new city councilors that are on. So a quick background about this. Several years ago, there was an initiative by the police department to remove its force from civil service. That discussion went to the fire department, and although interested at the time, it really wasn't right time for the fire department. The collective bargaining unit wanted to incorporate some of the benefits and protections that civil service offered within the confines of their contract, which is a legal document between the city and the collective bargaining unit. And so things like promotional, how we're doing promotions, discipline, everything that civil service spells out has been added to the contract. And after a lengthy discussion and negotiations, we came to an agreement that provided the protections they needed, and that they were comfortable enough to say, now's the time to get out of civil service. Civil service has served its place over the years as a product of civil service. I can attest to that. It is poetic that Councilor Jarvis read the motion because he is also went through the fire department as through the civil service process. And although it served its place over the years, it really hasn't within the last 15 years. It's been more of a hindrance than it has been a help to find good candidate people. We've been successful hiring people within civil service, but we only get the top 3 names on the list, and that's who we can choose from. Without civil service, we can put an advertisement out and choose from hundreds of people. The promotion policy that we've agreed to with the local is pretty in tune with civil service, but doesn't take the excruciating long time it takes to get an exam and results back and then a promotion off of it. So I think it's in the best interest of the city to do this. The firefighters have agreed to this. Peter McGyver, the local president for the firefighters union, is on if there's some questions that want to be asked of him. But this has been a long time in coming, and we're finally at the point where everybody is comfortable enough to say, let's move forward. As far as the chief of department, that was a separate vote that was voted by the citywide vote. Civil service, the rules about civil service is you have to go out the way you came in. And so for the fire force, that will be city council. For the chief of department, that's going to be a ballot question.
All right. Thank you, Chief. We appreciate that update. Counselors, do we have any questions for the chief while he's here? Counselor Jarvis, would you like to say anything or at this time?
Yeah, well, I'll just back what the chief says. It can be excruciating long time to find candidates when you when you get a list and people come in and refuse, and then you have to send to Boston and get another list, and people come in and refuse. And by the time you get candidates and interview, it's almost seems like it's time for another test. And I can contest to the point of waiting for your test scores to come back after 12 months of studying, and then you take the test and you wait and you wait and you wait. They contest the questions and you wait and you wait. It just seems like a long waiting game with civil service. So I hope this alleviates that problem, and I know we'll have a good pool of candidates. But to me, the other plus side to this is that you get that you know what you're getting. With civil service, sometimes you don't know what you're getting. But we've been fairly fortunate in Greenfield. We've gotten great people from the civil service list, and great firefighters and dedicated firefighters and lieutenants and captains. I don't want to leave them out either. So not just the firefighters, but lieutenants and captains. I'd like to hear maybe if Pete has something to say on the flip side of this also.
Yes, I'll recognize Peter in a moment. Councilor Lapiensky, you had a question.
I believe it's been explained to me before, but for myself, for a refresher, and also for any members of the public who may be watching this, explain the difference, Chief, if you would, between civil service and a regular hiring process, because I think I understand it, but I'll bet you anything that there's someone who's going to watch this either live or later who doesn't.
Chief, let me ask you that question for Councilor Lapiensky. Please, if you could clarify the difference. Thank you.
So it's a great question, Councilor. Thank you for asking that. And I know that is a question that a lot of people out in the general public probably don't have a good grasp on. So civil service was put in probably over 100 years ago to prevent crony in positions like firefighters and police officers. With new laws that have developed over the 100 years, with new hiring practices, with new HR rules, with a lot of other things that kind of has taken that away. The civil service process for hiring, what happens is that every 2 years, the test, statewide, and that test grades people by how well they do on a written examination, not based off of qualification. You'll get more points for qualifications, but the first step is a written examination. The list is then established by residents, and then it opens up to statewide. So for us, a big pool of firefighters that we've always wanted to attract has been people that are firefighters within the county, but not necessarily residents of the city of Greenfield. If they didn't show up as a resident of the city of Greenfield, the chances of them showing up on the statewide test was very slim. So we never had the opportunity to go out and try to recruit local folks within Franklin County to stay here. The other thing I've seen is that 3 oftentimes doesn't support diversity. Okay. It is very rare that we see a female come across out of the three names. It's very rare that we see a female. It's rare that we see any type of diversity with our hiring process. With the new hiring process, there will be a detailed way on how we're going to hire. We are going to advertise. We also has expanded our call force capabilities to try to train people to be the next level of firefighters within the city. And it really gives us a broader pool that we can choose from. And that's what I think is the biggest benefit that we're going to have. So instead of 3 names for one position, we could have up to 100 names and really get qualified people that may already be firefighters, may already be EMT. It just makes our process a lot easier, and it also gets us a bigger pool of people to attract. Now, with that, one of the, I'm not going to say drawbacks, but one of the things that has been a concern that's raised is one of the benefits of civil service is it allows our veterans to receive veterans preference. Our hiring process has worked that out, that veterans are recognized within our hiring process, so that component doesn't disappear. But that is one thing that people have raised as a concern. The majority of the out of civil service, which is just about everybody in a large portion of Western Mass, most of them have already been removed from civil service. They actually have found it much easier to hire. The other big difference with civil service is civil service has some protections in it in regards to discipline and other mechanisms. So if a firefighter was to be disciplined, he could it or go through civil service for an appeal. And that's a concern that the firefighters anywhere have had. With the new labor rules and the new labor laws that have been established within the Commonwealth, it is very rare that a collective bargaining unit goes to civil service for that appeal. They actually go to the labor board for that appeal. And so that kind of has made civil service, almost a moot point in regards to the protection of the firefighters when you talk about discipline and things like that. I hope I answered the questions. If there's any more, I'd be happy to talk about it.
Thank you, Chief.
Just a quick follow-up. If we left the civil service, would the fire department still have the ability to, and would you choose to still prioritize residents of Greenfield?
Short answer is that everybody that would be of an equal candidate would be treated equally. However, obviously, if you live within the city confines, I would think during the process that would give you a better, like if you had the qualifications of the guy from, say, Deerfield, the same qualifications, I think that being a resident would nudge you out. There's specific scoring for that. There isn't right now, but we could work that in the hiring process if that was a concern.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Is there anyone else that has any questions for Chief before I recognize Peter McIver? Chief, obviously, if you'd stay on with us for a while till we get through this, I would appreciate that. Peter, if you're able to say hello to us, is that possible?
Hello.
Hello, Peter. How are you? Peter, would you like to state your name and title for the record? And then, hey, there you are. And then if you would like to give us a brief thought from your position and go forward with that.
Sure. So my name is Peter McIver. I live over on Carroll Lane. And I guess my official title in this capacity would be union president for the local that represents all of the career staff at the fire department. As far as civil service goes, there are a couple people on this call that could probably attest to the long history, sometimes in opposition to, and sometimes in support of. In fact, I've come before this board before to argue against removing the chief's position. So there's been many that have changed over the last 5 to 10 years that have led us to this point. And I think the chief hit the majority of the talking points that had to be said. I would just add that this was bargained at the table between labor and management, and it took a long process to iron out a lot of what we thought the shortcomings of leaving civil service were. Much that he said as far as promotion, we came to an agreement on probably 4 pages worth of how exactly we were going to lay that out. That can be a very long and complicated process under civil service, and we wanted to address all of those aspects before we were willing to say we were okay with walking away. And I think that's really it from my side.
Sure. Peter, in short, and I appreciate you speaking with us tonight, and I thank you. So as a simple thought, you are in favor of this. You have no reservations with us moving forward on the removal if you were to give a recommendation.
I do not have any reservations, and it was accepted as a bargain process and supported by my.
Thank you for that. Are there any of the committee that would like to address Peter on any or questions for Peter? Is there anyone? Peter, thank you once again. If you will stay tuned as we get through this in case we bounce back, but I appreciate it and good to see you. And we'll go through this. So is there any other counselors that have not spoken yet on this subject that would like to speak, ask any questions? Or are there any of you that have any questions or concerns? I'm seeing none. I will go back. Councilor Lopinski or Councilor Jarvis, who have already spoken, either one of you have any further comments or commitments? Yeah, comments or commitments. Let's not commit. Let's just comment or opinions or questions. That would help. Any questions? All right, seeing none. I think we've heard good explanations from both our chief and the union of the fire department. So I appreciate that. All those in favor of sending a positive recommendation to remove civil service as outlined in what Councilor Jarvis read, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Seeing none, we will send a positive unanimous recommendation to this full council. And remember, we're always here at A&O in advisory capacity, and all our votes are only an advisory to the full council. They don't constitute any changes. They're just an advisory capacity. Chief, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule. Stay safe out there, and we will talk to you soon.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, can I make one more comment?
Of course.
This has been a very long and often interesting conversation since I've been a firefighter from day one. I appreciate everybody's time you have taken tonight to look into this and hear what we have to say. This is a major deal for the fire department. Anybody that has a family member, they'll tell you that this is a big deal. So I appreciate you all taking the time, giving it careful thought, and putting forward the positive recommendation. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right, and I appreciate all of the participation from both the chief and Peter for coming before us tonight. Next on that ends the motions for tonight. So that's an interesting twist, as we've been going hours with motions in the last couple of months. The next is the discussion on the proposal to amend the rules of procedure. And I'm looking in the participants, are either our town clerk or our council clerk on this call? I'm seeing none. Was it my understanding, Councilor Forgy, you were on the chair's meeting? Did you think one of them was going to come and speak with us this evening? Did you think that was happening? You're muted.
Oh, darn. Um, um, it wasn't clear to me, actually.
Right.
However, I think that we're discussing this evening.
Right.
A
So,
conversation can take place, be my opinion.
yeah. I think we could go through this briefly, and then we have a strike-through version from the clerk's office in our packets. I actually went and printed mine out in color, which I don't normally do because I can then see the red strike-through versions. Because I'm always saying, see the strike-through version, so we all look at it and say, well, if I had 3 screens, I could see the strike-through version. So what if we all remember, and Councillor Forgy or Jarvis, if you recall this from past conversations, please bring it up. To my knowledge, the idea of updating the rules of procedure is just that. This is to go through and do maintenance, as we hate to call it, to the rules of procedure, because some things have been changed, things have been added, and this is a recommendation to bring them into today's use. Is that your understanding? Okay.
Yes.
So I think we'll handle this a little bit like we did. Was someone making a comment? I'm sorry. Okay. I think we've got some bandwidth or something going on today. We've got some dropout. It could be me in the snowstorm over here in the northern Greenfield area. So looking at this, I think we could look at this a little bit like we did going through some of the charter, and we see what they wanted to do and go from there. So the first thing talks about the organizational meeting. The city council shall meet for organization on the first business day in January following the regular biennial city elections. That was what was recommended. And that just says there was some confusion regarding when regular city elections were held, if the understanding that they are held every 2 years. Therefore, organizational meetings should be held every 2 years and not one. I believe there would be a smoother transition and burdensome change of committee members that will require coming into the middle of a highly involved issue or topic. So, what does that mean? Councilor Forgy.
Thank you. I agree with you and Ed when we were talking about how did this come into being. It was Kathy and Tammy that put this together for a little bit more clarification and editing of the process. So I think all the changes in here, reading through them, are pretty good. The first one, however, is a little bit concerned to me. I'm not quite sure that it clarifies. And here's the point that that I wonder about. It says that we do have it says biennial elections. We know that. It says that there'll be reorganization on the biennial years. Now, in a couple of last year, for instance, well, our last reorganization was biennial, but the one before that was not. So I'm wondering how we can get a little bit more clarity into when a new panel of councilor officers should be elected. And my concern right now is that our next biennial election will be in 2024. So we have one more year for those of us who joined, like 4 years ago. We have one more year. And the question is, do we continue under the council leadership that we have at this moment? Or do we elect new people wasn't clear to me when we were voting. Well, it was clear to me that the term of office was 1 year.
That is correct.
How do we reconcile this at this particular point? That's my question. So
Yeah.
I'm throwing it out there for everybody
No.
to think about.
It is, I like to follow a lot of the P's of council government, protocol, procedure, policy, and precedent. We have always had annual elections on the governing body of this body. So I think that is one section that I think we need some clarity on, and I think there's going to be more discussion on that one, because I'm not sure that how it would change if they wanted to change it as a group. I think there would have to be a date put in to change it, not say effective immediately, because that doesn't work. That wasn't the presumption we made when we elected these officers. So that was just my theory. Councillor Lapiensky, I see your hand.
Yes, I have just one question, because I reviewed this in advance. All of the comments and the rationales are written in the first person. It does not say who I is. Does anyone know who that is?
Thanks, Councilor Lapiensky. Hold on. Councilor Forgy, do you have explanation of that?
The I is our city clerk with help from Tammy. That's the I. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor. So is there any other discussion on this? Councilor Jarvis, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that this could get a little convoluted. Say we elect new officials next year, and we elect them to a 2-year term, but we elect city councilors so it limits the pool that you can choose from, because there'll be a group of city councilors that only have a year left.
Yeah,
So,
and that's where I think we fall in a problem with that. That was one of my concerns. Although, Councilor Lapiensky, if you have another question, put that hand symbol down for me, or up. Thank you. I just want to make sure I don't miss you. So, Councilor Jarvis, I agree. There's roughly 4 councilors or so that turn over every election cycle. Not specifically, but you're right. If one of them has 1 year left, that should not be an exclusionary basis for them not holding an office. Or it shouldn't be an inclusive situation where somebody's only able to run if they can serve 2 years. So I think we have some issues with that. And I think that's why we always went annually. I do believe. And we used to talk about councilor president not more than 2 years. We had that discussion in the precedent of what we've done in the past. So I think you're right. I think this needs some to be looked at a little more and get some clarification. And this might be one that I think if we were to vote on this immediately, I'm not sure where it would go, but I don't see it moving forward. Councilor Bullock, did you have any questions on this? Okay, I just don't want to ever miss anyone. All right. Then I see election of officers. Is this where we still are in section C? And that would be to remove treasurer as an election of officers. And there is a real explanation for this. In the research of city councils, not one has a treasurer. It's my understanding, according to the clerk, the treasurer elected in case a quorum was needed in the absence of the president and vice president. There is no legitimate need for a council treasurer, and it should be removed from the process. The function of the council treasurer has been adopted into our finance department within city government. Is that correct, Councilor Forgy? I think you might be muted.
The treasurer's position is really sort of a vestige of the way we used to do business. um, before this charter came into being. And it makes sense to me to follow this recommendation. I also want to point out that the charter committee working on similar language within the charter did recommend that we remove the treasurer position from the officers stated in the charter.
Okay. And I know, at one time, I've been a counselor on and off for a long time. And I remember when we used to have the 28 member council, and I was a counselor in 2001. We read a balance of our counselor budget and where it was going every month. And that's what the treasurer did. It reported, we have this in our balance, we have this in our, and obviously, as any of the newer counselors, and I say that to everyone beside myself on this call, we've not done that. It's not a function that we do anymore. And so I don't see anything we have to follow up on this piece on, and that's, remember tonight, we're just discussing. We're not voting. We're just looking for things that need a clarification. Councillor Forgy?
We can actually, all counselors can access financial documents through our Google Doc file. And that actually gives us the actuals at any given period of time. The one thing to understand is that there are quarterlies that are put out. So you may not get one for every month, but quarterly you can look up the operating budget for the city council, and that will give you the correct numbers.
All right. The next one is going to be interesting. It addresses, should we meet twice a month? Other municipalities, as stated here, meet twice a month, and it alleviates longer meetings and decreases the need of special meetings, and makes financial matters quicker to be voted on. Wow. I will talk from both sides at the moment. I think that in some ways our meetings have gotten to a point where they are excessively long at times, and we go till they are. I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but I can see that. And also, I don't think we have that many special meetings that do. And I think we're still going to have special meetings when someone misses a deadline or we need something to do. I don't think it would alleviate that piece. And I'm not sure everybody wants to have 4 or 5 meetings a month, because if you're on a committee or 2, you have meetings. And then if we have 2 council meetings, now you have doubled, you have 4 meetings. And if we get into budget time and Ways and Means needs a meeting, we're going to have a 5th meeting. So, I have my reservations, and that's just personal. I think I'd rather have one longer meeting and get our business done and then move forward. Councillor Jarvis and then Councillor Lapinski. Councillor Jarvis?
Yeah, Dan, I'd like to, I just want to kind of echo you and saying that, yeah, we haven't had a problem with holding special meetings. It seems like we've been able to get a quorum to have special meetings. We haven't had that many of them. Me personally, being on Ways and Means and on the fire department committee, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 9 meetings this month. So if we added another city council meeting, that would be 10. I don't mind getting my stipend for my meetings, but it doesn't have to turn into a full-time job either, which it is already kind of a full-time job to begin with. So as everybody knows, it sits on the council. Yeah, I am not for this. I just think that it's been, I'd rather have one long meeting if we have to. And I think the meetings have been fairly decent. They get longer during budget season, but that's just the nature of the beast. That's all.
Before I recognize Councillor Lapinski, I will say that, every time I've come back on council, they say, would you like to be on Ways and Means, your expertise? And I go, not. And it was regardless of to do with what chair, because I think it's a tough job when you're the chair of Ways and Means. And I just shake my head at how many meetings they have to have. And we all work, we all have lives. So, I just worry about additional meetings. Councilor Lapinski.
I'm going to click the hand button now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I do not feel strongly on this one way or the other, but I'm going to say two things. Number one, I spent a lot of time when I used to live in Northampton observing and attending the council meetings there, and they meet twice a month, except for in the summer, and I will tell you that some of those meetings go till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So it's not clear to me that the number of meetings necessarily affects how long they are, because when you have the time, you use it. To that effect, my second comment is that it is my opinion that being able to make that comparison, that the Greenfield City Council isn't necessarily as jealous of its time. I think it's gotten a little bit better under President Gilmore, but of one thing that would help to reduce the length of our meetings is, for example, a time limit on how long the mayor and officials may speak. I witnessed one, I believe, in November, where the city officials combined went for an hour and a half. So not that they don't have important things to say, but if we gave them a time limit, say 5 minutes in advance, I expect that they would give us a concise summary and then step out of the way so that we could do our business. So I would rather find all the efficiencies we can before we go to a second meeting, but I'd be open to it if that's what it took.
Thank you. I really appreciate the comparison to Northampton. I think that's a great piece of information for this body to know that Northampton went to 2 and they're still meeting at midnight, 1 o'clock. Very good. Thank you for that. And I also at times feel that our agenda needs to be adjusted for length of some pieces of that. Councilor Forgy. Muted.
Thank you. I guess my question in all of this is, what cities or neighboring cities were we being compared to?
Sure.
If, for instance, it wasn't necessarily a city or it was more of a town, there's not very many mayoral governments in Franklin County. Most of them are Board of Selectmen, and Board of Selectmen do meet twice monthly. In most cases, that's the way it's set up. So I would caution against going to 2 meetings, a council meeting twice a month. I think that we have opportunity to schedule as our needs dictate. So it makes sense to me to leave it the way it is at the moment.
All right. I would say on this one, like tonight's just discussion, we can check for some clarification. I think this would be one that when we give our recommendation, I think the vote could definitely change on the floor. I think it's one that is going to be a very varied opinions by councilors, and this body will take a look at it when we get to that point and make a recommendation. We heard tonight, I don't think it would do very well. I, in some ways, agreed with Councilor Lapinski in that I don't have a horse in that race. I would prefer 2, 1 meeting. I would like to stay with 1, but if 2 was the majority, I guess we could see. Anyone else on this before we move on?
I will just add that I do think there's an accessibility issue with the council. I'll say that I sort of knew what I was getting into with committees and council meetings, but in terms of like the amount of time I spend responding on email to people, not just in my precinct, and the outside meetings. Like there's 2 other meetings tonight that I was invited to as a city councilor that I was like, I can't attend. They conflict with this. I think in February, I attended like 13 meetings and events for the council. So my interest in when I signed up for this, after speaking to many people in my precinct who we were trying to get someone else to do it first because I was like, I have 2 kids and I work 2 jobs and
Been
wasn't
there.
really my preference to do this right now in my life. But it was completely and utterly inaccessible to people, to working people, to people with young children. That's one of the reasons I'm so in favor of virtual. Like, I don't want to be out of my home 13 nights a week when I'm already out of my home 50 hours a week to work. So I'm interested in making access to the council more accessible for working people. And I think that adding another meeting to our plates, it does not do that.
Thank you. Yeah, so we'll get a little clarification on this one, and when we decide to move forward, I think we're leaning towards where our opinion goes on that, but it'll be interesting to see. Thank you for that. The next one, what talks about quorum, it's pretty self-explanatory. If the governor accepts the charter changes, it would change that section. We don't need to discuss that. Presiding officer. I see a strike through. Oh, that's a treasurer comment again. Yeah, this talks about the treasurer, which is part of the charter changes. So we can move forward on that. We don't need discussion on that. That brings us, I think, through page 13. Now page 14 doesn't have anything. If anyone sees anything I'm missing, page 15. Filing of papers. This clarifies the City of Greenfield's 5-day rule to submit any documentation for council consideration. And I don't see any, that clarifies what we're already doing. If anyone sees anything, let me know. In the same manner as listed in section F for G, that's the same thing. So that's just one of those maintenance pieces. Moving forward, action not necessary. So that's a strike through. No council shall make such an invitation of a pledge of allegiance. The president shall produce a schedule. So that's just a maintenance piece. No discussion. Section D. Any business presented to the council would continue to be listed on the monthly committee chair's agenda until the matter has been fully resolved. So the clerk of the council will keep a list of pending matters, which will be furnished to the council by way of the committee chair's agenda. That's fine. That's what we're doing. If business isn't finalized by a committee, it goes back on the agenda for issue. That's good. Composition change. Why are we, I don't know, it's saying Ways and Means would go to Finance. It is, in my opinion, that Finance Committee is a more self-explanatory title than Ways and Means. Well, let me make an admission here. I adopted the title Ways and Means when I was the first president of the new government, and I get to name all the committees. And some have changed, and Ways and Means followed Mass General Law. We don't have Mass General Law. We don't have a Finance Committee. We have Ways and Means. So that's where we followed. So I will recognize Councilor Forgy, but Councilor Lapiensky, I saw your hand go up in that moment. Councilor Lapiensky, did you have something?
I'm opposed to all of the committee name changes that are before us, this one and the other one.
Okay, that's good feedback. Thank you. Councilor Forgy?
Well, I guess I'm an old dog, and I really like the idea of Finance Committee. It's how I cut my teeth in municipal government, and it's just easier to say. But it's not necessarily, just say Finance Committee and say Ways and Means Committee. But it's really a non-issue. It doesn't really matter at all if people want to change it or not. The function of the group is the same.
It is surely naming rights. That's what it is. I mean, where, this is the Pledge of Allegiance piece, and then committee chairs. I'm a page behind. Thank you. All right, I see Ways and Means. Anything else on Ways and Means? I think it's kind of interesting with Ways and Means because I can remember Councilor Maloney talking that, you know, he was the first Ways and Means chair under the new government, and he was much in favor of using the term Ways and Means. But I do. Appointments and ordinances. Although the majority of resolutions are considered unforeseeable items, I believe they're similar to ordinances. What are they want to add the word resolution, or what's going on here? Can someone, this is our committee, kind of funny. Although the majority of resolutions are considered unenforceable items, I believe they are similar to ordinances. Help me, Councilor Forgy.
I think it's very basic. They're just asking for resolution to be added as a description of what the committee does, because resolutions, not always though, not always, they mostly come to Ways and Means. I mean, not Ways and Means, I'm stuck on that. Appointments and ordinances.
Yeah, so they're saying all these resolutions that have no teeth, but mostly are just feel-good measures, would be added to the plate. I have no problem with that. Someone's got to look at them. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Community Relations and Education Committee. Now, it's kind of funny. We never called it CRE. It was Community Relations. Somewhere along the line, by the time I left and the time I came back, they added an education. In the late 1990s, the town council voted to combine their education task force with their community relations committee. This committee should be used for the sole purpose of open communications between the city of Greenfield. A school committee has already been established, and they, along with the department heads, present their reports to the full council. And it's kind of redundancy. So I have no idea. I see why we did it. So that answered my own question. I have no opinion. I think it could be community relations just as easy, because that education piece, I don't see that. I don't see us. I've been back these years, and at the end, I don't see them taking on education. And if education was a community relation issue, it could be brought up at community relations. If there were problems where people were having with the school or the fire, we don't have to call it community relations and fire. You know what I mean? If there was a question, we'd bring it to community relations. That was the idea. When that committee, that was a new committee developed by this form of government. And the idea was exactly what, like Councilor Bullock and a few of those, we wanted to see what was making it easier to access us, what problems in the community. And we've used that committee very successfully at times to look at that. So I have no problem in that change, but any other opinions? I know Councilor Lapinski said he wasn't in favor of changing IJR 1, but any other thoughts? Do we need to look into this? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Anybody?
I wouldn't say I have an opinion yet, but yeah. It does concern me that a committee was taken away, or that was combined. And I do think that there is potentially the need for there to be discussion about education that could happen, that would be like, too in depth, or a recommendation that could go to the council that would be important. Especially with like what we saw with the school committee last week. Clearly there's a lot going on in the schools and with decisions that are being made. So I think I just need more information about this and what has actually been brought to CRE.
Let me give you a little bit of history for just a second, because that seems to be my forte. Education task force was never a committee. It wasn't a standing committee. It was a subcommittee. Just like we made the new subcommittee on the fire, that's what the education task force was. It was a subcommittee of a committee. It was not there's only been the committees you see now. The names changed a little bit, but there was never an education style committee. It was a task force. What are you calling the fire one, Councilor Forgy? What is it? It's the.
Oh, it's an ad hoc.
And what's the title? It's the.
Right. It's it's an ad hoc committee to examine the fire department building.
Right.
Financials.
Well, that was the necessity, Councilor Bullock, where that came from. The education task force, there was a time when we went through a rough roll with the school and superintendents, and it just was. And when you were talking about attending 13 meetings, there was a time as council president, I had to go and sit in on the school committee meetings because it became that dire need. Mayor Forgy was mayor then, and she remembers we sat looking at each other through all these meetings. It was, and soon after that, the task force came out and then out of my time, but that's what it was. So they never got rid of a standing committee. It was a subcommittee, and I think they wanted to move it in. My only thought on this, on what you said, was if there was an education situation like coming out right now, that if there was some piece of it that could go to CR, that could go to community relations because it's effective, or any of us could bring up a subcommittee or an ad hoc committee. Ad hoc is probably a better term. So that, just to give you a little bit there, it was never, we have not lost any committees nor added a standing committee.
That's helpful. Thank you. I think the education task force committee piece made me think it was a committee.
Yeah, that's what reading it when you read it, I'm like, that sounds like it was a committee, and it was not a big standing committee. Councilor Lapinski?
Yeah, my summary of the last 5 minutes or so of discussion is that it's not going to matter that much whether we make a change. And so that's where I come in and say, if it ain't broke, maybe we don't need to spend time trying to fix it.
No, I understand that piece. The biggest idea, if we're just trying to clean up things in the maintenance piece, that would be considered a maintenance item because education could leave that without. Where Ways and Means versus finance is actually, kind of a significant name change, and that's going to have, Councilor Forgy and I like, arm wrestling off camera or something. So, we're good there. All right. Thank you, Councilor Lapinski. I appreciate that. And it's a good point. Some of these things are just that. If it's not changing anything, I don't have a fight in that one either.
And also, I really want the arm wrestle to be on not even on camera, but in.
No. Any citizen or petitioner shall be limited to 3 minutes. I believe that is the protocol we're using. So this is just bringing us into our own update. So I see no problem there. Moving on. Does anyone see anything else, or is that it? That's it. Yes. So we don't have a lot of work to do on this. We'll bring this back and ask a couple of clarifying questions that were brought up by this committee. And then I see us moving forward by our next meeting with this. What I would love to ask this committee, and Councilor Lapinski, I think, brought up a good point when he said, he looked through this and he worked on this and he thought of. That's what I'm just going to ask you to do again. All of you take a minute, take a look, and if there's something there, so when we come to our meeting of next, we can just move forward and address the questions. And anytime we address or ask a question of, in this case, it's our own department asking from clarity from either Tammy or Clerk Scott, is that they give us the explanation before our meeting so we can get onto it and then understand where that came from. Is there anything else on the rules of procedure overview tonight? Anything I missed? Anything? All right. Seeing none, we are going to move on to Code of Conduct. As you might have noticed at the chair's meeting, there was some discussion that started, and I brought up best practices from a Mass Municipal Association. I talked about MGL chapters of the law on what pertains to conduct of counselors. And then, one of the other things that has always bothered me in town government is when we try to create something that we already have, the redundancy of starting over when we have a starting place. So I asked the council office to look through and tell us what's already in place. And lo and behold, we have a couple of documents that have appeared over the short history, not a long history, that pertain to this. So I think we know some of the situations that have arisen recently. And I think some we saw addressed in emails from the public to us. And I received a couple of phone calls. I believe, if anything else, as we take a look at our code of conduct, which I think the council should reiterate, if not adapt, is all about what is expected and what might not be known to all counselors or all people in government. I also made the point at the chairs meeting that I too wanted the same return from other departments. And those have already been addressed a little more in detail than the council. When we go to a meeting, there's a certain level of respect for department heads, for the public, for counselors, for other members of other bodies that we have to maintain. And some of it is MGL chapter, and others are civic and guidelines submitted both by departments here and other things. So we've got some stuff to talk about here, and we can move forward. Councilor Lapiansky, I see your hand.
So my question is, I see here there is, I lost it.
Don't worry, there's a lot of paper.
Not that much. It seems like this discussion was started because of a request from the mayor, and I'm wondering why the mayor is not on this call.
Nope, it was not a request from the mayor. It was an observation of actions from counselors that started this to be questioned, and I asked that we take a look at this, and it fell on appointments and ordinances. The mayor responded in unison, I would say, more than individually.
There's a message here from Roxanne Wiedegartner.
Yep.
Hello, Kathy. The tenor of the discussion, it may be a good idea for the council to consider adopting this. So it seems like, from the information we have in front of us, that the impetus for this discussion came from the mayor's office.
But that's not true, because I was the impetus for this discussion. So the mayor might have at the same time reacted to other pieces that were going on, but this was brought up to me directly following the last council meeting. And we can get back to that shortly. But also in this packet, you can see that in the office of the mayor in December 12th, 2006, then Councilor Mayor Forgy put a code of conduct together for all Greenfield boards, commissions, and committees. That's in your packet. That piece was pretty direct. And in this code of conduct that was adopted by the mayor and still stands because it was never repealed, shows a code for boards, commissions, and committees, and it was followed up with a violation of this code of conduct is sufficient grounds for removal from office. So it had a piece there. Then there's also the Greenfield Code of Civility. And that Code of Civility was for elected and appointed offices. And if I'm not correct, that is something that was in the past given to you at the time you became a counselor and asked for your signature. And the Greenfield Code of Civility also addresses some of the situations for taking responsibility for their own actions, present information truthfully, and so on and so forth. So I believe we don't have to start over with a code of conduct. I think we have to look at what we already have. Counselor Jarvis?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Yeah, I was just going to say that I don't think we have to start from the beginning. The wheel's already been invented. I think we may need to make some wording changes just due to that's 21 and not 06. I do say as being the boss of, or the second in command of one of the departments, I remember every year handing out paperwork to all the employees saying, sign this paperwork. It's not saying that, it says that you've read it, you've understood it. If you have any questions, you can ask it, but you have the information. And I'm kind of surprised that as city councilors or board members or committee members that we don't get this information and have to sign a receipt saying that we've been in receipt of it and we know what's expected of us. I think this needs to go out. And I also emailed the mayor shortly and said something needed to be done about notification and people understanding what's expected. So I think it's a good idea to go through this and get some ideas and everybody and present our ideas. And I believe that people should have to sign it. That way they're accountable.
Yeah.
If you sign something, you're accountable for it. If you don't sign it, that means that you didn't receive it. I mean, by signing it, you said that you received it.
Yeah, and I believe knowledge is what we might have been lacking. I can't hold someone to an expectation that they're unaware of. Some of us would like to call it common sense or, in that kind of thing. But I believe when anyone joins a board, a committee, an ad hoc committee, a finance situation, a building committee, I think the code of conduct, which was adopted by this city in the past, should be used and put forward. If you noticed in the beginning of the meeting tonight, I started off the meeting with MGL Chapter 30A, Section 20G. It is recommended by the Mass Municipal Association that every meeting be opened with that piece. And some are. Leave Councillor Jarvis, I believe you would know that some of your state meetings in fire and such are opened with that statement. And was it new to anyone?
No, I recommended that 6 months ago that we started our meetings with it, and every city councilor got that in writing that I recommended it, and it hasn't changed.
They did. And Councillor, I talked to former councillor and clerk, city, I'm trying to think of her title, Daniel Letourneau, and she sent this out to all of her boards and committees also in the past. And I think, and my point to all of that is, this is MGL, this is law. This is not, you can do what you want. And I believe that if you're going to get the level of confidence that we have to reiterate, follow recommendations, and we already have a code of civility that has a signature line. This is not a new document that's in your packets. It's an existing document. The Councilor Forgy document. There is also a Mayor Weidergartner document that was around about civility. And I think it's important for us in every board and committee to make sure we have that level of understanding. We also have a situation that I have to look into for this committee when we come back and we get closer to looking at the code of conduct, is we have the reverse of something going on right now, and that is when you become a counselor, it does not take away your First Amendment rights. You can still speak anywhere you want, but in order to speak, sometimes we have to put a disclaimer in that we're speaking from ourselves and not as the council, because there's also MGL chapter law, and I don't have it in front of me, that says it's against the law to cause defamation of character for the municipality. So if you speak on behalf of a topic and you use wording that puts the municipality at risk of lawsuit, it's against the law. It's not just a bad idea. Councilor Bullock?
Yeah, another thing, that some of these documents that were attached had specifically was talking about like knowing open meeting laws and things like that. I just did an open meeting law training this week.
Great.
And I was pretty concerned because after that, I think it was our last city council meeting. I was, someone approached me and said that one of the counselors who had voted thought that he had got consensus beforehand and that all the counselors voted against him. And I said to the woman, well, if he got consent, I will say right now, he did not speak to me. And if he got consensus beforehand, he violated open meeting laws. And I think it is like, who knows if this person who's a constituent was just saying something to say something, or if the counselor said that and it to her, I don't know, but it's concerning to me. And I'll say this as a new counselor, that there's not like an onboarding process where some of these things are outlined for new counselors. I feel very lucky because there's like a group of women elected officials that are running trainings for newly elected officials, but they're, hard to go to and all of those things. And I think that we should have an onboarding process where these things, there's at least like an hour-long meeting where we go through these at the get-go to stave it off at the beginning.
Councilor Bullock, I could not agree with you more. And I will tell you that in my early days, we had that. I went to things to learn. You're not just elected and all of a sudden you understand it. I remember looking at Councilor Forgian for years when she was the mayor and I was the counselor of the new government. We looked forward and said, we didn't get a handbook with this job. Do you remember how many times we said that? There was no handbook. It was new things and we were creating things. But I agree with you. I think we're lacking. And someone just asked me why I'm taking such an approach to getting this rectified. It wasn't my job to watch anybody before, but you just elected me as vice president. And I believe it's now my job to pay attention. So what happened before I got here was not my concern, but I'm here now. So I think we're going to have a look at this stuff. And you're right on. We cannot hold people to a standard that they're unaware of or that they've not acknowledged. I think we'd like to think everyone knows, but I think you're right. And Councilor Jarvis saying that it should be signed off as it was. They didn't have a signature line on this form because they didn't want you to sign. We have to sign for our computers and we have to sign for our parking passes. And I think we should have to sign how we talk to people. Councilor Jarvis?
Yeah, I'd also like to know, I'd like to say that counselors can be aware of there is a number that we can call to the State Ethics Board if you have any questions. I just had to call them for the second time in 2.5 short years to find. I knew I was going to be in conflict anyways of the next one here anyways. But after taking the refresher course 15 times, I knew that I was going to be in conflict, but I wanted to get it from the state attorney. But the counselors need to know that they have that number, and if the city clerk can't help them, then she will refer them to the attorney with the which can answer any ethics questions that you have, because it can be kind of confusing at times.
And I will say that, thank you, Councilor Jarvis. I will say too that Councilor Stemple Ray, when she was the president, she often was in favor of us going to MMA trainings and seminars. There was always one held in Boston, as Councilor Bullock just mentioned, that deals with new people being elected, kind of a seminar. We seem to have stepped away from that a little bit. And I believe education on those issues, as Councilor Bullock mentioned, is important. She was lucky that she found somebody. I think we've got to look at that again. It's out there. We are a member of MMA. You see an invitation all the time in your 235 emails There's always about 6 or 7 of them that talk about MMA and seminars and trainings. And we used to have a fund, Councilor Forgy will have to tell me, we used to have a fund that you could get reimbursed for going to those. It was part of our budget for the counselors. If you went to the seminar, you could ask for reimbursement. You know, I think it's time, it's, you know, as we look at this code of civility and code of conduct, that we address that. We have the tools, but are we using them? Councilor Lapiensky.
I would just like to remind the chair that to the general public, MMA stands for Mixed Martial Arts, and they do train, and I would suggest that the chair remind everyone who may be watching this on video what he's speaking of.
Sure. I appreciate that. I like the fact that you're keeping this light for me, and I appreciate that because it's the Mass Municipal Association. Is that correct? MMA. I just want to make sure I got the acronym correctly. And they are.
What that was. I just thought that an MMA training would be confused by members of the public.
It's funny because when I Googled MMA and I asked like MMA rules to open a meeting recommendation, it gave me mixed martial arts. So, you know, you are correct. That's what happened when I looked up the abbreviation. So, yeah, so that's the association that puts forward. We also, in this packet, have the Mass Municipal Association recommendations that I found, which was the best practice series that came out in January 20, volume 5, number 3, that addressed best practices recommendations for conduct and civility of public officials. That was a really good piece. I had that included in your packets this evening. And I think it was important that we go there. The other thing that I started to mention, and like always, I tangented somewhere, but we also have to have our First Amendment right, like I was saying, and we get to go to meetings. When I had meetings that I was going to, whether it was a school committee meeting in the past, or I've gone to zoning meetings, I open up by saying, I'm Dan Gwen. I'm a resident of Precinct 2. I give my address and I say, I am not here on behalf of the town council this evening. I'm not here on behalf of being the president of the council or the chairman of EDC, which I was for years. I'm here as a resident. I'm here as me. So please, anything that I say this evening is not construed as counsel. It's my personal opinion. Now, there are times when we're asked to go and represent the council, and obviously you wouldn't put that disclaimer. We have to reiterate that policy at the moment because there's also a part of Mass General Law, MGL, when I refer to MGL, that says we cannot use our office for special treatment, privilege, or receiving gifts and monetary reward. It falls right into that. If you're stopped by the Greenfield Police Department and they say, I'd like to see your license and registration, and so you say, do you know who I am? That's a violation of MGL right there. You're not to use your position on a board or elected as leverage in anything. I used to always say, and we all know I had a lot of conversations with the tax collectors of Greenfield. And at one time I used to say it was tougher on a counselor because they had to make sure that they followed 110% of the rules and regulations because it couldn't appear that they were giving a counselor a break. And that is actuality of our office. So when you walk into a meeting, we can't use the fact that we're a counselor or a board member for gain. In most cases, you should use a disclaimer that you are there on behalf of yourself, unless you were given the task. If Councilor Forgy asked Councilor Jarvis to attend a meeting on behalf of Ways and Means or the Fire Committee, and he says that's what he's there for, then he is. But other than that, and I think that needs to be reiterated to this council. I recently saw that there is a topic being discussed in a Zoom style meeting this week that says an officer of our council is leading the discussion. It's not an event from the council. It's an event from the individual. So once again, I think we have to be very careful, and it goes along with the code of conduct, and that's MGL law. That's Mass General law, that you can't use your title to benefit you or get some kind of feeling of advancement because you're using your title. So I think we have to look at that. And once again, what all of you have said, I think what Councilor Jarvis, what Councilor Bullock, we have to let people know, and we have to have a process that reminds us of all of that. I'm going to open the floor again as we move forward. And then I think I'll take some ideas on where we move forward on our code of conduct. Do we look at the Greenfield Code of Civility and update it and move forward with that? I don't think it takes starting over. Councilor Bullock, you seem to have been, paying attention to this subject and looking at it. What's your opinion? Where do we go from here? What would, as a new counselor, help me?
I mean, I think as a baseline, having a code of conduct that's signed by all counselors is like a basic, right? And I like updating what we already have. The longer sheet that was in the packet, I'm not sure who put that one out, if it was MMA or it was the one with like the green heading. I think it was MII.
That's Councilor Bullock. I think that was a reference sent by another municipality on their code of conduct policy as a example.
Yeah, some of those pulled out, I think, especially as part of like an onboarding packet. But then having a shorter document that is easily read and signed, bullet points, that is basic sort of behavioral standards and standards of respect and dignity. I think that, what has come up for me is that the level of sort of like harassment and like threat that public officials are facing in our current time, and this is like school committee, city councilors, health boards, like across, zoning boards. And I'll say I've gotten some emails that are like borderline, like threatening certain things,
Yes.
like, and have sort of made a commitment to try to respond to everybody, at least everyone in my precinct who writes to me. And it's one of the reasons I didn't want to run. And so I think that putting in some, like, for us to start with a real just baseline, how are we going to respect each other in this position, and what is the model that we are setting for our city, and how we treat each other, and how we present ourselves to the public in relation to one another, can be outlined in I think these bullet points that the city already had for a code of conduct. And when you were talking about it, I looked through my packet to see, like, did I get this when
And did you?
I don't think I did, because
I'm just curious, because
I don't think so, unless I didn't get a copy for myself and I signed it and handed it over and I don't remember. But I think that starting there is a good place, and then taking that longer risk management sheet and making it more of like an onboarding packet with some other stuff.
Thank you. Councilor Forgy?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to state that I think that anything that we could do to enhance and publicize a code of conduct, rules of civility, whatever you wish to call it, is a step in the right direction. I keep going back to this memo that was included from December 12th, 2006, where it talked about behavior boards, commissions, and committees. It has always been an issue in government that we have to be vigilant against sort of these bad behaviors, and how do we control them and set rules for ourselves. So this was done for the administrative side of government, to set a tone, which is really, really important in this conversation, setting the tone. We can only control ourselves. It's like what you say to a child when you're raising them. You say, I don't care what she did. You can only control yourself. That's a big issue. But I also would like to see some joint statement between administrative and legislative governments that talk about this piece of civility, and this piece of conduct, because I believe that, again, everything starts with an organic reason to live. And I don't think that there's been enough said about the cooperation that exists between the different sides of government. And in the past, there have been people that have been concerned about this. And Dan, you mentioned that before you were talking, and you were saying that you're here now. What went on in the past, you had no authority over, but what is going on now, you certainly will step in and try to mitigate situations. And that's a great thing. But I would encourage a joint statement at some point, if for no other reason than to show that there's cooperation and collaboration, and that everybody understands what's on the table, and everybody understands what the rules are and the expectations are. And it's all basically boils down to a matter of respect. Again, setting a tone of respect and cooperation between the two branches of government is extremely important to me. I can't tell you what to do, you what to do, you what to do, but if we get together and we make a statement, right now we're dealing with our own issues, but I think it should extend further so that it encompasses the whole government. Thank you.
No, I would agree. Respect, well, before you talk, I wrote down respect because I think that's where it starts and ends. Respect is where we've got to start this conversation and where it ends. And I agree that it's mutual respect for other boards and how they're treated, and how, I wouldn't want any of us going into town hall and mistreating our clerk or any other. It's not acceptable. It's about respect. Councilor Lapinski, I see your hand.
Yes, and now you don't. And so I have two comments.
Sure.
And that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on this discussion. So I'm unlikely to raise my hand again unless.
No problem. No limits.
Well, Javas was talking about limits a few minutes ago, so I'll be brief. Number one, I'd like to remind everyone else here that we are not the same as members of boards and committees or administrative staff. We are directly elected, and that means that we are not accountable to the chair, the president, the clerk, et cetera. We are accountable to the public, and to that effect, there may be majorities of voters from time to time. I don't know if the country at large can reflect on this at all, who wish to elect someone who chooses not to abide by those rules, and there's nothing that the clerk's office or the chair or the president can do to force a counselor to sign that. They've been duly elected. And then the second comment is that civility, politeness, decorum, all of these things are things that we may all generally agree on, but they are fundamentally in the eye of the beholder. That beholder can often have a different perspective if they come from a different culture, in a different part of the country or the state. And so it's not clear to me that we should assume that everyone necessarily agrees, even though the 5 of us may believe that we ought to. As a matter of fact, the Supreme Court, I believe it was in the 1990s, said that one man's vulgarity, and I'll add women because they didn't say that, is another man's song lyric or woman. That concludes my comments on the subject.
Thank you, Councilor Lapinski. The only thing that I would add that some of what I spoke tonight is Mass General Law, and Mass General Law is Mass General Law. Elected officials. If some of the things I talked about, like accepting money, using your ability to perform your office in using it to personally change policy, there's a lot of things that are covered under MGL, and that's law, whether you're elected or not. Obviously, some of the stuff that are recommendations, those go back towards respect and humanity and civility versus maybe law. And I think here's my point, completely off from what was just said. I believe that you get respect in a community and from stuff by respecting the office. We just lived through a president that didn't have a lot of respect for the office of the United States, and it led to ill feelings. We can't allow our personal opinion to lose respect of the council as an office, as a position. So we have to be very careful. Step on a limb. I'm used.
Councillor Gwynn, we cannot hear you.
And we lost you.
I can hear you.
Okay, you're back on.
My point was what you said earlier. We can only control our own actions. We can, it's like, and I believe, I would like to say that I have disagreed with people in this community for 20 years or more as an official. And I think if you asked people if I was ever not respectful, I would like to say that the majority would say, he's never been disrespectful to me. He's disagreed with me many times, but there's no disrespect. Even but I'm not going to put them down. And I'm being lost again.
Yes, you keep on cutting in and out, Dan.
So bandwidth. I just would say that as we look forward to this, Councilor Bullock, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Councilor Bullock, I'm going to take this code of conduct, code of civility, the Greenfield Code of Civility that's already a document that councilors used to sign. I'm going to take this on as a project to add to it, to come back to this body with an updated document. Would you work on that project with me?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
I think it would be good if you and I could work together and then bring it to this body again and move forward, but maybe take some of the stuff that's historic and some of the stuff that's not in here and still try to have a one piece of information and then make a recommendation. I appreciate that. So I will work forward, going forward with you on this project. And any other counselor in this community, please send me information. Send it to your I just don't think we need a 5-person project. If 2 of us can work on it and bring it forward, I think we'll be getting there quicker. And I thought Councilor Bullock added a lot to this discussion on being a new counselor, and those are the things that sometimes get overlooked. Is there anything else on this subject that we need to talk about tonight? Anything under new business?
Oh, I think we lost him again.
Can anyone see me? All right. Any old business?
None, Dan.
Our next meeting is April 13th at the City Hall Meeting Room or via WebEx. Motion to adjourn.
So moved, Jarvis.
Second, 4G.
Goodbye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Good night.
7:08.
Seeing this meeting adjourned at 7:07 p.m.
Good night.
Good night,
Thank you,
everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
All those in favor, I'm ending this meeting now.
End it.
And
Good night.